The January jobs report reveals new numbers on employment, and economics say the data is weaker than expected. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the U.S. added 143,000 jobs last month, but that is lower than projected. But at the same time, though, the unemployment rate edged down slightly from 4.1% in December to 4% in January. So let's bring in CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger. Jill, thank you so much for joining us today. What do you make of today's report, and what exactly does it tell us about the job market?
Of course, we want you to look past the noise of the month to month, okay? Because there are some cross currents in this. As you said, the top line job number, 143,000, seems like less than expected. Now, listen, it's not that much less. It's 150 to 200,000, which is where economists were. We had the wildfires. We had snowstorms. There were some factors that will probably get worked out over the next few months. So if that number was a little bit less than expected, what was more than expected was the previous 2 months. They were revised higher by 100,000 total jobs. So it kind of feels like those two things balance out. The other part of the report that I thought was really interesting was average annual wages. Those were up by 4.1%. And why is that important? Well, inflation's running at about, let's call it 2.8 to 3%, depending on what you're looking at. And that means wages are up by a full percentage point more than the inflation rate. So when you think about yourself in the economy, if your wages are rising faster than prices are rising, you get to keep a little extra money every month. That's a very important piece of information that workers should feel good about. Like, hey, may not be every single person, but on average, wages rising faster than prices.
So, Jill, I think you just touched on my next question there, because you talk about inflation. We talk about inflation a lot lately. Are these numbers, do this mean good news for inflation?
It depends, because what I think it really does tell you is look at where we are with inflation. We have come down from 9% in the summer of 2022, and we went in a hurry to about 3%. But it's been very hard to go from 3 to 2%. What the Federal Reserve is trying to do is balance the two jobs it has, right? The Fed has to have an economy that's growing fast enough to create jobs and pay decent wages, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we have right now. But the Fed also wants to see prices come down towards closer to 2%. So what the Fed is seeing here, and what I think is important, is the economy has been able to withstand higher prices and high interest rates without seeing job creation crater. And that's one of the reasons the Fed can sit on the sidelines and wait to see if that inflation rate continues to come down some. Look, it's not going to be immediate, and certainly the tariff situation would complicate the Fed's ideas here. Right. But I don't think anyone should think the Fed's going to lower rates anytime soon. The job market is just fine.
So the revisions made to last year's data tell a different story than the one that we originally heard. So what did we learn from all that?
Well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics compiles data on a monthly basis. It's very complicated. All they do is they actually say to companies, hey, did you bring people on? Did you add staff, or did you lay people off? And companies don't respond immediately. It takes a while sometimes to get the full picture. So once a year, the government says we're going to take all the data that came in late, we're going to look back, and we're going to see what the numbers really were. And the government found that there were almost 590,000 fewer jobs added for the 12-month period, which goes from April of 23 to March of 24. That seems terrible. It's not great, by the way. You want to have as accurate a picture as possible. But we still had positive job creation. Even during that year where we saw fewer jobs than we thought, we were averaging 195,000 jobs a month. That is a solid growth rate for jobs. So it's not quite as good as being at 240,000 a month, but 195, most economists would say, I'll take that every single day.
All right, CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger, thank you so much for the context with all we discussed today. We appreciate your time.